podcast. It's going to be the Slaughtneil show this evening, so we're delighted to have Grainne, Chathain and Tina Bradley with us, guys. You're very, very welcome.
Thanks very much Adrian, to be on the show.
You have a nice setting there. It looks like a fine fridge behind you and everything. You've gone all out for us. It looks really well.
Oh yeah. We were just there in just before the All Ireland. We moved in February, so still set into the new house.
Yeah, that's the job. I suppose as we're having this conversation, I suppose it was just announced this morning that the club championship is going ahead. So I suppose that's put a little bit of a pep in your step if you're training over the weekend and stuff like that.
Yeah, up here now in Derry, we have our league. Our league starts now the 31st of July, so that will be a match, I think, every Friday and even a Tuesday thrown in, so we'll be thrown back in at it. I know.
It's always good. It's something to aim for. I think whenever you're training there by yourself and not knowing if you had league or championship or whatnot, now that you know that there's a goal and there's a target, it's helping to get back to training to get things right.
I think it's nice to have a bit of league before championship too. Like our championship is knockout, so
right.
You only get one chance at it. So that starts then in September. So it's nice to get a few league matches in, and yourself, I suppose, getting your touch back in and getting your eye back in for game day. So that's it. That's all of August. Then we've league, and then into championship in September.
No room for slip up. So if you want to go and retain the title this year, you have to win every single game. No pressure. So.
The knockout nearly every year we play knockout, so I think it always makes for interesting,
As a club championship, never know.
As long as you're on the right side of the results.
I know.
Exactly. That's exactly it. I suppose. Look, we were kind of vocal enough on the podcast that we maybe felt that that County Camogie should have gone first, because I suppose the opportunity was there for them to maybe showcase the game without the opposition from the hurling and the football, I suppose. But for yourselves, how do you feel about it? It must be nice maybe to be kind of playing competitive games at this time of the year instead of waiting around for County to finish and stuff like that.
Yeah, I suppose the last few years for us, we're fortunate enough that we've been playing right up till March, and then we've had the break, so it probably hasn't affected us as much. There's a few girls on the county panel, all right, but I suppose we were in between having a break, and then the likes of the girls that were going into the county had a lot of winter training done, and were probably hitting the ground running and didn't have that, the horrible winter training, the winter slog and that. So it probably didn't affect us hugely directly. No. Probably the likes of Aoife and the Cassidy girls, and probably Sinead and a few of the girls that would have been playing county. But if you'd have asked us, I suppose a few months ago, we probably wouldn't have even thought there would have been camogie going ahead.
I know at all.
Given the whole circumstances. So
it's great to be back at it at all, isn't it? Yeah. So it's good for the soul, good for the mind.
Yeah, getting up to the pitch just to even see matches and things like that. There's nothing like that.
Yeah, we had a challenge match this evening though, and geez, there was a crowd out that you wouldn't see the championship match. I think people are just starved of action and they'll come out and watch anything.
More madder now than ever.
That's it. Look, I suppose before we talk about camogie, Grainne, just tell us a little bit about Slaughtneil, because I suppose it's not just a special club, it's a very special place. So just tell us a little bit about the parish and I suppose how the Gaeltacht ended up being set up, and just a little bit about the place in general.
I love how Slaughtneil have got this now, that they're a very special place. It's no different from a lot of other rural places. It's very green and quiet most of the time, but no, we are blessed to live where we do. So we're just a rural area in Derry, and we have a population of 1,000 people or thereabouts. But we've a community hub or community centre called Anne Cairn, which is run by the community, and I myself work in it. So I work. The aim of the community centre was to try and put the Irish language back in and to give it a bit of a rebirth in the area, because it wasn't all that long ago from Irish speakers or native speakers that lived in Slaughtneil and spoke Irish. So part of my job role would be working a lot with the youth and the Gael skill and Irish medium skills around in the area as well. And we're fortunate now, like that came from, I was a pupil in that school when it was first established in 1990. It was first established in 93, and then whenever like we're starting out with 10 pupils in the entire school, and now you're right up there with 80 or so like weans attending an Irish school, which is just fantastic. So there's a big respect for Irish culture, taking in the language, the sport, the music, everything. And I suppose we've like a great group of people who are so committed to that cause, that love their culture, love their language, and have that respect for their language. And whether you're an Irish speaker or not, like that respect is throughout the whole community. So we're fortunate enough that I suppose that kind of goes part and parcel. People that they're hearing the language being spoken on the pitch, at the pitch and around the grounds, and the community centre then as well. But Slaughtneil are known for this wee tiny that have no shops or no bars or whatever, but we've got an arts theatre, so we hold like gigs. There's some great artists that have been Gotcha or Bioga, them have performed in Slaughtneil. So you hear that there's no pub, so there's no shop that you can buy a loaf of bread, but all that aside, you can still go and have a music gig. That's
it. So
right
if you need a pint of milk on a Saturday morning, it's not the place to go. But if you're a connoisseur of the fine arts, you'll have all you need there. Yeah, exactly. what was
so
like? No, look, it sounds like a great place. I suppose it's different. I suppose maybe sometimes we don't understand exactly what culture is like in Ulster playing. I suppose one of my best experiences ever in GAA was be part of the Kildare management team. We played Antrim in Cushendall, up in the Glens in a National League game, and it's a daunting place to go with no supporters and a weak team. But I can just remember the girls singing the national anthem before the game with no backing music, and the mountains up to the right hand side and the sea out to the left. I was like, geez, this is unbelievable. It's just something that will always stick with me. There's just something a little bit special about, I think, the culture there, that unless you experience it, it's maybe a little bit hard to describe. But I suppose what was, like, to the casual observer, it might have looked like Slaughtneil's success came kind of out of the blue. So, like, what was it like when you were playing underage with Slaughtneil, and what were the years before you made the breakthrough with the first All-Ireland win like? Were you always kind of close to making the breakthrough, or did it just, I suppose, happen almost overnight?
Well, probably from a personal, like, our underage, we were lucky enough to have a good, strong team, but that never meant you were coming out of Derry easy or winning underage championships easy. It was always very close between the underage teams, but the Slaughtneil, well, the senior teams weren't successful and hadn't been really up until, like, the Camogiers won our first senior Derry in 2012, and that was, well, the footballers won in 2014, which was the first championship one, and then from 2012, then that kind of got the ball rolling. But before that, we weren't necessarily successful. We were always nearly in finals, but getting beat by very close margins. But then Derry had very strong teams like Swatra and Lavi at that stage were, and Coleraine as well. So it wasn't like, or the standard of Camogie and Derry at that time was very good.
You're probably looking at Coleraine should never talk to win. Did they play intermediate All-Ireland?
Yeah, they won 2 intermediate All-Irelands then as well. So it was tough enough coming out of Derry, but then it's only in recent years that we've become, I suppose, more successful, and then all three codes, it all just sort of came together at a good time. All codes then were successful and won, but really the Camogie team hadn't been successful before 2012, and that there was a good group of maybe 10 players that had come through underage, were strong coming into a senior panel then that strengthened it, and with the experience then of 4 or 5 others that had been there for years and years, that it was all just a real learning curve at the start. Still is a learning curve, but
then probably Sean and English on the schools team as well.
Yeah, that's true, actually. Yeah.
While all this was going on, Tina, you were cutting your teeth around St. Brendan's Park and Tullamore and all these kind of places. It was not a million miles away, but it may as well have been a million miles away from all this that was going on in Derry.
Little did I know.
Yeah, so you can't do the Roy Keane on it now and say that it was always your dream to grow up and play for Slaughtneil, or the Robbie Keane's thing was always no matter what jersey he pulled on, it's always been my dream to play for Tottenham Hotspur, Celtic, whoever it was. So you can't pull that one now, but yeah, I suppose, look, when you won the first one, obviously Tina, you'd made a fateful trip to Australia. That's well documented, and met Patsy there, and you're kind of knocking around Slaughtneil, but you weren't involved in the first one. So would you been going to the games and stuff and watching, or yeah?
Yeah, I think it was kind of notorious nights out up in the Slaughtneil Hall after like matches and things like that. So would have got to know the girls just from obviously meeting them out and things like that. And then I went to watch I'd been to a good few of their matches, but the one that really stood out was probably the time they played Burgess. They played Burgess to Hurling All-Ireland semi-final down in, where was that? In Monaghan, was it? Monaghan? Inish. Oh God. Inish, yeah. And that day was, I just remember Trace Mellon getting in on goal, and they were just unbelievable that day. And I remember walking away from Inish going, they're going to win the All-Ireland. Like, it just was so impressive. And then I was at the All-Ireland final, and it was amazing to see the girls. Like, they were so good that day. I remember Eilish Cassidy getting a brilliant score from the sideline. Mary Kelly, Mazza Kelly, in for goal.
You read a book about her alone, just.
And just everything. I remember you just remember being so happy for them, I suppose. It was just a team from Derry to be coming up winning an All-Ireland senior camogie final, just the stuff of dreams. But you just after seeing the girls that day, you just knew there was something special about them, and they were going to go on to great things. And then I had moved up the following April. Myself and Patsy had planning permission, and we planned to start building that June/July. So I came up, and then Patsy had said, why don't you go up the road and play a bit of camogie with Slaughtneil? Because I suppose I was at that stage where I was thinking of maybe retiring and hanging up the boots. And
look at her now.
It sounds like Patsy suggested it, but I presume you had a pat bait to the door going, here, listen, you need to get this one tugging out for us. I presume it wasn't all of his own initiative to get her up playing.
Every night out in the local bar or in the hall, anytime. She was plagued, God love her. Especially she was tortured.
Did you have any doubts at all about going in? Because obviously, I suppose, an All-Ireland winning team, were you afraid, or did it ever cross your mind, or might be a stupid question, that you might have upset what they had there by kind of maybe coming in as an outsider, or did you kind of already know the guys and it wasn't really such a big deal going in?
Like, you went up to the pitch and the girls suddenly weren't strangers or anything like that. You'd been meeting them at matches, and you'd been meeting them up in the hall, in the dugout, and all these places. And Grainne actually brought me up to my first camogie training session. She came down and lifted me, and I remember we played our first league match maybe against, was maybe Lavi, and we headed into the dugout then that night.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. And
it's just a break her in.
That's it then done. You're not truly in the team until you've had the night out. That's the way it works.
Well, Tina didn't tell you, I took her up to our first training session, but then I ended up marking her in the first. This was after boozing after the first All-Ireland, and I ended up marking her for her first training back, and I was good. Leave her back.
Send it back down the road. Jeez, you didn't ever do it easy, did you? I suppose like the first one you won by 2 points against Sarsfields. I suppose that was the start of the rivalry with Sarsfields. The second year you beat Sarsfields, it was postponed. It ended up being played in Monaghan, and the third year you played against Martins in probably the worst conditions you'll ever see a game played in. Like, so I suppose you haven't had it easy. You had a couple of close scrapes with Lougheed as well. So I suppose did you ever look back on the whole journey and think, Jesus, it could have all ended at different times along the way?
You see, in that semi-final we played Thomastown,
Thomastown,
which
oh my
everybody
God.
gets heebie-jeebies thinking about it. It was a huge wind, like it was mental conditions.
It was a game of two halves really, because we had the wind in the first half, and then they had it in the second half. And there was nothing in it.
There was nothing in it, a puck of a ball, and we were lucky that the time just ran out in the full. It was a draw. The time we just and we've got
we had to win
extra time
in the first half extra time, and I suppose you wouldn't been used to ever playing extra time. Like, you're playing like the Farrell girls, and you're playing Kilkenny outfit, which are just a deadly outfit. So, and then I remember Siobhan popping up for this brilliant score. I think it was against the Breeze maybe in the second half. You know, when somebody gets that big inspirational score, you think, right, yes, keep driving on. But no, yeah, there has. You look back, there's
but that was a game that if we hadn't won that toss for extra time and had the Breeze in the first half of extra time, I think it could have just went anyway. Like it really was a point for point. That was a horrible game. I never want to go back to that, but
I'm coaching Thomastown now, and there's actually a photo of Slaughtneil up in the dressing room, and they all look at it for 10 minutes before they go out training. So it's the real motivation. It's the motivating factor now to try and get back to the Ireland again. That's not true, by the way. That's a joke. I suppose it's a phenomenal thing of what you've done. I mean, I remember saying on a podcast before that, like, okay, you haven't won the most All-Irelands in a row going back over the history, but like it's never been harder to do what you've done, I suppose, with the strides and strength and condition, and every team is prepared now. And like we were talking about the Galway Championship last night. In one group in Galway, you have Mullard, Drahan and Sarsfields, you know, and in Wexford you have Martins and Oulart, and like there's just so many class teams all over. So what you've done is phenomenal to go 3 in a row, like against that quality of opposition. I suppose the big question is how do you keep going? Like what's the motivation, and is it something you have to work hard at, or is there that bit of a natural hunger inside the squad, or do you have to work at it?
You're looking for the secret.
Well, no, but look, I suppose I manage UL, like, and UL have won 5 in a row. But the advantage of a college team is that every year you've 7 or 8 new players coming in who didn't start last year, and they drive it on because they want their medal from on the start. But obviously, you don't have a huge turnover with your panel, so without giving away the secrets of Fatima, you know, how do you keep doing it? It's a genuine question.
No, if there's a secret, they haven't even told us yet, to be honest. So no, I think we're very fortunate to have a management team that keep us very grounded. Everyone has a role, and I think, like Anton, when you have a very good, talented group of players that are committed, you need a very, very good management structure to kind of glue it all together. And we are so lucky, and that consistency to have the same management team over them last few years, like, and everyone has their role, be it like whether they're doing stats, you know, whether they're looking at the gym programs, or your hurling, your camogie training as such, like, but I think they're just supposed to try and keep us really organised, and then you feel like when you go to the pitch, you just go to train, that they look after everything else, and your job is to perform. And
that's the thing. But you mentioned just your natural hunger, like even the success has been feeding into those younger players that are coming into. Yes, there may only be, last year there's 3 new girls coming into the squad, and it was like they were chopping at the bits to get up. They're 16 years of age, and that hunger does really like come right through. Then it like rubs off from one player to the next, and it's brilliant. And then we've had another 2 or 3 coming in this year, which is great. As well as losing players, you are like the experience that those younger girls are getting year in and year out is you have to rely on it, and they have to get the call and perform on them big days as well when they are called for. But
and you realise that, like, I suppose the good times aren't going to last forever, so you just think you just want to keep winning as much as you can for as long as you can, and because I suppose you don't know when the journey ends or anything like that. So there's nothing like it.
Okay, while the sun is shining. And you're dead right about your managing, because look, I've been involved in different commodity teams. Your management are a special bunch. I think, like, I suppose logistically it's quite difficult for you guys as well, isn't it? Because I suppose if you're looking for good quality challenge matches and stuff like that, you're kind of isolated geographically. And I remember the first time I got a phone call seeing the +44 number coming up. I can't remember who was involved in it. It might have been Limerick or Kilkenny or someone. Slaughtneil looking for a challenge match. I go, jeez, lads, are you travelling? Like, are you coming? Because I don't know if we can even afford to go up. Never mind have the game. But like, I remember being on UL one night and just seeing the bus below. I'd say it was probably the first time I became aware of how serious an outfit you guys were, and seeing the bus below with the Northern Reg. And you'd be used to seeing it because we rugby matches on and stuff like that. And he's realising then you were playing Tipperary blowing Limerick, and you're kind of going, these lads are a serious outfit. Like, they're not just a flash in the pan or whatever. You're really going to the ends of the earth to get the preparation right. So I suppose it's tough going, but
that's it. But you kind of get into a way of it whenever you're expecting it to be tough. You plan all around it. It's not just a case of rocking up the training anymore. What it used to be in 2012, whenever we did win that championship, that's how training was. You rocked up, you dusted off the bits, and could have been lying in a bit from the previous training, like things just like that. It doesn't happen anymore. We've nearly taken it that next step that you're expecting the management to be professional about it. You're expecting the players to be prepared, and to give it 100%. So we're just lucky that we have everything, or the committed group, the full group that we do have.
We've probably been playing a few practice games down in Dublin, which isn't too bad to travel to, really, and habits then.
Yeah, I had a brief stint with Offaly, very brief stint, and I think probably what tipped the scale for me was the trimming you gave us down in Abbottstown one Sunday morning. I think I had enough of it after that. So yeah, that wasn't great. But actually, I can remember that day going away from Abbottstown. I think I'd only ever seen two camogie teams play the way you played that day. I was kind of thinking, going, geez, there's nobody going to touch these for a long time to come. It's just it was scary to see it in the flesh. The only time I'd ever seen anything like that before was a trimming Kilkenny gave us one year with Limerick. We went down to James Stevens one Sunday evening, and they just walked through us, and like that was the only time I'd ever seen that level. And so, talking about county, like the level that you guys are performing at and have performed at, if you just threw on the white and red jerseys, I suppose for Derry, like there wouldn't be anyone that'd keep it pucked out to you in the intermediate championship. So I suppose the hard question to ask, it's been all very positive now and smiley, but I suppose how come there hasn't been more buy-in from the club for the county scene? And I suppose, is that down to the organisation of the county, or is it because, and I've seen this, like it's so taxing to get as far as March that you just, like, going into county isn't even in question. You need to recharge the batteries. You can go with that excuse if you want, but tell us the truth.
That's what I was going to go with, actually. By the time March comes around, and truth be told, this hasn't even like that year that our final was postponed to the end of March then, which wasn't it in April? I had actually considered going back to play for Derry that year, and see, by the time that match was played, I said, no, I cannot look at think about going up to Owenbeg to train, and then that was another year missed, and like I wouldn't feel right taking a month to myself after club and then coming out to play for Derry when the other girls have trained hard and done them things. So for me, like, that has been the case this past couple of years, and you get to March and you just think, no, I need a month or 2 months of not looking at camogie for a while, and have got a headspace. But
there was 5 or 6, I suppose. We had like Eilish and Brona and Aoife and Sinead and Trace, and so there has been about 5 or 6 girls that have committed themselves to Derry. Anyone else? There's been a few. Shannon did a bit last year. So there has been a few girls thrown the red and white.
It's hard to keep doing it all, isn't it? Like, and I suppose the schedule doesn't help either. Like, the National League is on right through the club and stuff like that. Maybe if one thing comes out of the lockdown, it might be that the Camogie Association might have a look at the schedule a little bit and and spread it out a little bit, I suppose, like, because it's very, very loaded towards January, February, and March. I suppose the 2019 final, or the 2020 final just gone in March, it was definitely the final everybody wanted to see. Sarsfields, I suppose, have gone so close, obviously beaten them twice, and they've been in a couple of semi-finals as well. Like, it really caught fire in the last 20 minutes. Like, I suppose, do you feel maybe that you left it behind you a little bit? Is it one that hurts? Obviously, losing any final hurts, but do you feel that maybe you could have got over the line on the day? Obviously, there was some questionable, possibly refereeing as well involved. There was a few. I think there was a new hashtag invented. I'm not sure if we go into it, but the Brexit referee and Dominic Cummings was involved, was he? But how do you, like, is that a game maybe that you feel is left behind, and is that acting as a I suppose a motivating factor to drive on again this year?
Well, we actually had a discussion about it at training there last night, and it was just saying how in years to come, you'll talk about the wins and the victories and things and people will come up and talk to you about them, but you'll always revert back to that one that you lost. Like it's just human nature to pick out the fault and pick out the negative things. But and like we all went away saying, what if, and why did I not, and I did this and didn't do that. And
I think nothing haunts you more than regret, like, and suppose, and probably what we got out of last night's, you know, I suppose reflection on the whole thing was, I think everyone feels like, you know, they played a part in probably the fact that we didn't get over the line. You know, there was no finger pointed at one person in particular. You know, everyone nearly had a reason of why.
exactly.
Why we lost. And
but that's
you
the
know,
secret. Collective responsibility. That's what it is. Right. I'm gonna write that down. Take that straight back down to Kilkenny. No, but look, that's a very mature. It's a very mature thing. But I suppose it's the sign of a team that has won a lot as well. You know, probably if what happened to you guys had happened to a team that hadn't won one, it could be something that could be very fractious in a club. But I suppose it's a very mature, and look, it's the sign of a great team that you're able to do that and look back and go, listen, everybody played their part in this, and you're not pointing the fingers. That's a fair insight, I suppose, into the culture that you guys have there as well. So what's the season looking like for you this year? I suppose you had a league first in Derry, knockout championship then, and depending on what the Camogie Association do, there'll be provincial and our Hurling Club Championship at some stage, I suppose. We still don't really know recording this. How competitive is without hanging anyone out to dry, how competitive is the local scene in Derry at the moment?
I suppose that's your
Okay,
first
you can't nail a podcast to a wall, so you can pretty much say whatever you like. This doesn't go in print, so it's okay.
No, definitely the standard has got better in the last couple of years.
And that's your first one. Like you have to win Derry to get, you know, to be. You can't look past that too. Like, you know, you have to win your Derry championship, and then the last few years, like, you know, it was we only won by a few points last year. Like there wasn't much in it, maybe 5 or 6 points, if even, maybe even less. And the year before too. Like, so I think there's not, like, I suppose you have local derbies like anywhere in the country, and you just think that there's never much in it, like, and especially for ourselves, like, you know, whether we're playing Ballinascreen or Swat or anything like that, you know, there's no love lost anytime you go out to play each other. And even though I'm not originally from here, soon get the rivalry in among the clubs, like. So
it's tough, and I suppose as the number one team, I suppose, like, every time you play someone, they're going to be up for it, isn't it? That's the hard thing, you know. If you can't drop your guard any day, because everyone wants to be the ones that knocks you off the perch, I suppose. So that's a challenge itself. It'll be interesting to see what way the calendar does go, because I suppose it's looking likely that the provincial championship isn't going to be played until January. So I suppose that'll probably be something new for you guys if you do come out of Derry again. That, I suppose, maybe bridging that gap from September to January and how it's done. I know it's going to be a big challenge for us in UL, because we would always have played the counties in kind of November, December and January, getting ready for Ashbourne, the same as yourselves, and they won't be playing now. So I suppose it'll be a test of the management now as well, to see how maybe you might come down to UL actually and play us, so you can come down to Limerick again. You're more than welcome.
Come up the road, Adrian.
Jesus, we can't afford to go anywhere, I tell you. We'd only love it. Joe, what I'd say, if we gave them half a sniff of a trip up to Slaughtneil, I'd say they'd nearly pay for it themselves to go up. I'd say the same group, but listen. That's it. Well, guys, listen, thanks very much for your time. We've taken enough of your time now on a Saturday evening, so I really appreciate it, and very best of luck in the upcoming championships. And sure, who knows, we might see you down the road with Thomastown, maybe to right the wrongs of those semi-finals. Who knows? I just hit record on this now. This is going straight into the Thomastown group. Look what they were saying about you. Scandalous stuff. Scandalous stuff. But guys, thanks very much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
Thanks very much.
Lovely chat to you.